everybody. Beth here from Access Paranormal for this week's I Want to Know, which is a touchy subject. Yes, and the pun. But before I do go into that, there is going to be a bit of a serious note here as well. Jokes aside, the content I'm going to be talking about tonight might actually be considered a little bit sensitive for some people who might have had a negative experience regarding something in their past. So viewer discretion is advised with this particular episode if they're either watching it or hearing it as well, because not everyone's had a positive experience. So there might be potentially something triggering within the topics we'll be talking about in this particular session. So just saying that to make sure people are aware as well. Now with that done and set aside, hi Kaz, how are you? Incubus and Succubus, really intense subject actually. I would probably put this up there with demonic activity. I think it can potentially be such a really full-on subject, purely because of the nature of what either of these entities do, and I will go into it a little bit for people who may not know a bit about that. But yeah, that the whole intensity of it, the physicality of it, and particularly the violation of it as well. So Incubus is the male version, and I think that means it's Latin for nightmare, and Succubus is the female version, and I think that's Latin for to lie under. So these particular entities are meant to be known to be quite negative, but also not just from a negative, a lot of thoughts are around the fact they're actually demonic more than negative. And we'll go into a little bit about that later. Hi Shane, how are you? So, all right. With this particular type of phenomena, as you can imagine, these types of entities are distinctly different from anything that's considered evil and or demonic, because they actually sleep with people. That's one of the actual, that's their thing. That's what they do, is they actually end up sleeping, and it's not actual snoozing sleeping, if you get my drift. So these particular entities actually sleep with people, often against their will as well. That's what makes it an uncomfortable subject to really talk about. But people have experienced this type of phenomena for many, many centuries. And again, there are possibilities from paranormal investigators to even come across a case where this might actually be something someone might report to you as well. These type of entities don't necessarily just stay as a female, or just an incubus, or just a succubus. They can actually interchange. So that's one thing as well. So if it has a particular agenda, it might actually change into another sort of gender and actually go after a particular person for whatever it has in mind as well. Hi Karina, how are you? So there's that too. I always find it's the one particular report I've read up on as well is the fact that the incubus can actually, if they've had their way, can actually impregnate a woman, and she can actually have a child that is meant to be a half breed, and that's called a cambion. Now I know it seems fairly far-fetched with that regard, but it is kind of ties in a little bit almost with how there are reports of people who have had encounters of a third kind and much closer with alien life forms, and actually having hybrid children as well. Hi Han, how are you? So that's another thing as well. I always find this particular type of intense, possible paranormal stuff really intriguing. And the intriguing part is more from what drives something to do that. And, you know, if it's a negative or possibly demonic thing, then it's obviously got to be about control. And that's what it is with demonic possession. It's controlling the person's behavior and eventually taking their life. But from this point of view, it's not from a life-taking perspective. It's just purely from a control perspective, because when we're falling asleep or waking up or in bed, we're the most vulnerable. And so whatever is happening to these people, which is really, really intense. Sometimes when people have tried to fight it off, it can be quite violent. So people who do report possibly having incubus, succubus experiences will have bruising or scratch marks or anything like that, which is obviously not ideal, but that's one of the experiences they do actually report as well. Sometimes as well, there could actually be poltergeist activity associated. So it's not just from happening to them physically at the time. It can actually be stuff that could, objects can be flying around the room, like or falling or being thrown. The bed can actually shift before, during, or afterwards as well, and not just because the person lying on there and what's happening. So poltergeist activity can also be associated with it, which is really interesting from a a PK living agent type thing, or as an external spirit type thing as well, because again, that's a whole nother I want to know. I read somewhere as well that sometimes it can actually pick somebody and kind of focus on them from a youngish age, and as they get to their teenage years, it's kind of with them for most of their life. Again, that's kind of based sort of loosely on the fact that that person's very strong in their faith, in their Christian and or Catholic faith, and what it is obviously trying to convert them to the dark side and all that kind of stuff as well. Hi Martina, how are you? So that's another thing to keep in mind, some of the attributes of this particular type of phenomena as well. There are some cases actually where people enjoy it. People actually like the interaction that happens with these particular entities. I personally probably wouldn't call it an incubus succubus if that was the case. I would think that was another classification of a haunting in itself. Now, I think it was only recently Lucy Liu, the actress, said that she had an interaction in an interview and really liked it. Things happened, things finished, and it floated away, and she said she had a great time, and I'm pretty sure there's a couple of women that wouldn't mind having that kind of interaction as well. But jokes aside, sometimes with victims, when they have an interaction like that, they and it's negative and it's quite traumatic for them, they will actually feel quite drained, fatigued. I think depression's also something that would feel as well. They feel quite down. I think sometimes they'll say that they're spiritually sort of drained as well, and they tend to kind of think in a more negative way as well. That's one thing too. Hi Linda, how are you? It's another thing too. So with something like this, and it's being very intense, and as people who have known me for a little while, I'm always interested in this as well as from a demonic possession perspective. So I look at something like this and think, okay, what could possibly cause something as intense as this in someone's life? What could be a natural or normal or something that could help explain another possible alternative explanation, a PAE? And the closest can be sleep paralysis. Now, some might think, come on, Beth, really? Sleep paralysis? Oh, you just feel a bit funny when you wake up or go to sleep. But this is really intense. But you would be surprised how wired, how much we don't know about our brain, and how much potential our brain has when it comes to being in that particular state. So a snapshot, when we go to sleep, or when we wake up, it's hypnagogia and hypnopompnia. I know it sounds a little bit weird. That just means sleep-wake state from when you're either going to sleep or waking up from sleep. Now, obviously, we're not going to want to act out our dreams, right? Because if that's the case, we'd be all running out in the street and there would be all sorts of mayhem going on. So our bodies, when we get to certain stages of sleep, alpha, beta, and all that sort of stuff, and you go into your REM, your body will then shut itself down. Not completely, of course. You die, but, from a physical perspective. So sometimes the steps when it comes to that kind of a mismatch. So your body will kind of, okay, we're shut for business, but your brain's going, wee-hee, and they don't match. So that's where you'll get a delay somewhat, and that's where you'll get more visual hallucinations than you normally would. You'll also get audible hallucinations, so you'll actually hear stuff. It's not just from a seeing perspective. And of course physical as well. You'll physically feel things differently because your body's kind of shut down. And again, it's not just from going to sleep, it can also be from waking up. So how intense that can be on all sorts of different levels, all different types of hallucinations, physical, audible, and visual, you can start to see that, some people may be more susceptible to such greater discrepancies in your body shutting down than others, and that leaves a bigger gap, as I guess you could say. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that it could very well be extreme sleep paralysis. Some people call it old hag syndrome. That's another term that's often used for it as well. So there's that too. And then, of course, you've got to look at it from a perspective. Okay, so if this might be happening, if you've got a case and someone is explaining to you, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling, something's in my room, it's doing this to me, it's happened multiple times, I don't know what's going on, can you help me? These are a couple of things to keep in mind to see whether or not you can start to narrow it down and go, okay, could this be something paranormal going on, or could it actually just be sleep paralysis? Now, the first thing I would probably look at is, are there multiple witnesses? I know it's my favourite question of all time, but honestly, so much can be deviated just from that particular question being asked, are other people seeing this happening to you? So the person may have a partner. Is the partner seeing anything happening? Are they living in a house or place with some other person? Is that person seeing it or noticing it as well? That's the first thing. Is there multiple witnesses to anything that's happening around that particular phenomena being reported? Secondly, I would ask, is anyone else in the house being affected? So is it, is your flatmate, is your partner, is somebody else, is your family in the home actually also going through the same kind of thing? So that's the other thing as well that I would keep in mind. And also, is it happening with somebody, does it happen just where they sleep, or is it happening wherever they sleep? That's a big indication as well. Is it happening if they go and sleep with the, at the friend's place, over the weekend, or if they go camping, or whatever the case may be? Is the phenomena still occurring while we're on different locations? So, of course, if that kind of stuff's happening, a couple of clues to kind of sort of dig into a little bit would be if multiple people are seeing it, more than likely it could lean towards more exploring from a paranormal perspective. But if it's not, then it more than likely will be sleep paralysis. If it's something where multiple people are affected, again, that could be due to stress, because stress is a huge thing as well. A lot of people can be very, very stressed, and we really truly underestimate how much that affects our bodies as well. So if there's a lot of stress going on in the house, it's affecting multiple people. Sometimes that can also be sleep paralysis as well. But generally, if it could be just an isolated incident there too as well. And also, if they are stressed and it's intense and they're not getting to sleep properly and awake properly, that will actually carry with them through to other locations that they're going to also try and sleep at as well. So that's one thing to also keep in mind too. Hi Michelle, hi Amy. So there's a couple of things there as well. It is a really intense subject. As I said, it's one I've always been intrigued about because of the intenseness. If it's it's almost like the bad or the better kind of stuff, but from an educational perspective, trust me. So yeah, have a look through. Do some research yourself as well. There's some great, really, really interesting witness reports on the internet. So if you type in Incubus, Succubus, Paranormal, because if you just type in Incubus, Succubus, you'll get a lot about the history. But if you want sort of more about paranormal cases or witnesses or reports, there's some fascinating stories about what people have been through, and even the people that have enjoyed it. It's at first, it then starts to and this is where it starts to become not just a fun thing. It actually starts to overtake their lives. They enjoy it so much that they want more of it because it's so great. It consumes them. It's all they can think about. They can't function properly in society because of it. So that's when people think, oh no, we had a bit of a joke before, wouldn't it be great? But at the end of the day, if it starts to impact someone's life to that point, that's really interesting. Then you got to think about it. Well, is it from a sleep paralysis perspective, and is it what the hell's happening there? So is it really intense sleep paralysis that just keeps going? It's just fascinating stuff. I mean, I could geek on about it for many years to come. Hi Mick, how are you going, mate? Just about to sign off, buddy. So anyway, have a look, do some research yourself as well. I know someone had mentioned that there wasn't a topic to be explored. Each to their own. For myself, I prefer to sort of research and learn for myself, and everyone's very different with how they feel with this particular topic. So go forth and explore, and thank you so much for watching again this week. Take care.